Pay attention, because what unfolds today is not an ordinary moment in the sky. And if you've been quietly wondering whether your effort has mattered, whether the sacrifices no one saw were worth making, this message may arrive at exactly the right time. There are rare days when the universe seems to pause long enough to reveal the difference between wishing and building, between dreaming and proving, between imagining a future and actually creating one. June 2nd, 2026 carries that kind of energy. At exactly 7 o'clock in the evening, the Sun and Saturn form an exact alignment through a 60-degree connection. And what makes this moment so extraordinary is not its drama, but its precision. This is the kind of alignment that turns invisible progress into visible results. It is the point where something that existed only as determination, discipline, and persistence begins to take shape in the physical world. What has been forming behind the scenes now seeks a structure. What has been developing in silence now seeks recognition. What has been potential now seeks permanence. Yet there is something important you need to understand before this energy reaches its peak. This is not the type of cosmic event that rewards intention alone. It is not fueled by wishful thinking, positive affirmations without action, or promises that never become reality. Many people spend their lives waiting for a lucky break, imagining that success arrives as a gift. This alignment tells a different story. It asks a harder question. What have you actually built? What have you committed yourself to when nobody was applauding? What have you continued doing after the excitement disappeared and only responsibility remained? If over the last several months or even years you have carried a vision that refused to leave you, if you have continued moving forward despite delays, doubts, or moments when progress seemed invisible, then you may already feel something shifting beneath the surface. Perhaps there has been an unexplainable sense that a door is beginning to unlock. Perhaps you have felt that strange tension that appears right before a breakthrough, the feeling that something substantial is approaching even though you cannot yet see its final form. Hold on to that feeling. There is one crucial factor hidden inside this alignment that will determine whether this opportunity becomes a defining milestone or fades away before it can fully materialize. We will get there soon. First, you need to understand why this particular day carries such unusual weight. Many people become fascinated by eclipses, full moons, and dramatic celestial events because they create visible excitement. They attract attention. They generate headlines. But some of the most life-changing astrological moments arrive quietly. They work beneath the surface, influencing the foundations rather than the decorations. This Sun-Saturn sextile belongs to that category. It is not concerned with temporary emotional highs. It is concerned with results. It asks, what can endure? It asks, what can survive the test of time? Most importantly, it asks, what deserves to become real? The sun symbolizes your conscious identity, the part of you that knows who you are and what you are here to contribute. It represents vitality, purpose, and the force that drives your life forward. Saturn, on the other hand, governs structure, responsibility, time, and consequence. Saturn does not care about appearances. It cares about evidence. It measures effort, consistency, and maturity. When these two forces connect through a sextile, they create an opening. But that opening is often misunderstood. People assume a sextile means everything flows effortlessly. They imagine success arriving automatically. That is not how this energy works. Think of it as standing before an open gateway. The path is available, the resources are available, the blueprint is available, but movement remains your responsibility. The opportunity exists, yet it still requires participation. The universe provides the framework, but you must provide the action. This is why some people will experience today as a powerful confirmation, while others may feel almost nothing at all. The difference is not luck. The difference is preparation. For those who have been showing up every day, even when motivation was absent, this alignment can manifest in tangible ways. Long-delayed approvals can suddenly move forward. Professional recognition can arrive. Agreements may become official. Boundaries that others ignored begin receiving respect. Projects that seemed stalled gain stability. Work that once felt invisible starts attracting acknowledgement. Not because fortune suddenly appeared, but because Saturn finally recognizes that the foundation is strong enough to support expansion. Meanwhile, anyone who has been relying solely on ideas without execution may experience silence instead of movement. That silence carries its own message. It reveals where action is still required. It highlights where discipline has not yet matched ambition. Saturn never punishes for the sake of punishment. Saturn simply reflects reality. It shows you what has been built and what still exists only in theory. To understand why this moment feels so significant, look back to February. That was when Saturn entered Aries, initiating one of the most important astrological transitions of this era. Saturn requires approximately 29.5 years to complete its journey around the Sun, making its return to the beginning of the zodiac a profound reset cycle. Aries represents initiative, courage, independence, and the instinct to move quickly. Saturn represents patience, mastery, and long-term construction. These energies do not blend easily. They challenge one another. They create friction. And that friction has likely shaped much of your recent experience. You may have noticed an ongoing struggle between urgency and restraint. One part of you wanted immediate progress. Another part understood that lasting success required preparation. There may have been moments when you felt ready to leap forward, only to discover that additional planning was necessary. Perhaps you became frustrated by delays, obstacles, or repeated tests that forced you to prove yourself again and again. Many people interpreted these experiences as setbacks. In reality, they were training grounds. Saturn in Aries has been teaching a difficult lesson. Courage alone is not enough. Passion alone is not enough. Vision alone is not enough. Real power emerges when bold action is supported by structure. Real leadership emerges when confidence is supported by discipline. Real success emerges when determination is supported by consistency. Over the last several months, you have been learning whether your desires are strong enough to survive responsibility. If you have responded wisely, if you have resisted impulsive reactions, strengthened your boundaries, remained committed to your goals, and invested your energy into something tangible rather than merely talking about it, then today becomes a moment of recognition. It becomes evidence that your effort was not disappearing into the void. Saturn has been observing every choice, every delay you endured, every disciplined decision that nobody else noticed. And now, as the Sun forms this exact connection, those hidden records move into the light. It is as though the cosmic review reaches its conclusion. The examination ends. The assessment is complete. The file that has been accumulating evidence of your growth receives its verdict. And what makes this even more fascinating is that another shift is already beginning to form beneath the surface. The energy building now is not isolated. It is connected to what arrived on June 1st, the subtle transition that prepared the ground for everything that is about to unfold. As you continue watching, you are standing in the space between one chapter closing and another preparing to begin. Before we go any further, there is another piece of today's cosmic story that changes everything, and most people are overlooking it completely. While everyone is focused on the powerful connection forming between the Sun and Saturn, another transition is quietly reshaping the landscape of your inner world. At exactly 8 o'clock in the morning on June 2nd, 2026, Mercury leaves Gemini and steps into Cancer. On the surface, that might sound like a simple planetary movement, but psychologically, emotionally, and energetically, it alters the entire way you process reality. Think about the difference between reading a map and standing on the actual ground. Gemini operates through information. It seeks facts, comparisons, analysis, and endless mental movement. Under Mercury and Gemini, the mind races. It gathers data, explores possibilities, and attempts to understand life through logic. Cancer functions very differently. Cancer does not ask what something means first. Cancer asks how something feels. It listens beneath the words. It senses safety, vulnerability, belonging, and emotional truth. When Mercury crosses this threshold, the center of perception shifts from intellectual analysis to emotional intelligence. You may already be noticing this without realizing why. Conversations suddenly feel more personal. Decisions seem less about statistics and more about whether something genuinely resonates within you. The future is no longer an abstract concept existing somewhere ahead. Instead, you begin imagining what it would actually feel like to live inside that future. What would stability feel like when you wake up each morning? What would security feel like in your relationships? What would accomplishment feel like in your body rather than in your imagination? This transition is occurring at precisely the right moment because it prepares you for the Sun-Saturn sextile in a way that few people understand. By the time the exact alignment arrives later today, your awareness has already shifted. You are no longer evaluating success solely through mental calculations. You are beginning to experience it emotionally. You are sensing the reality of what you have built rather than merely thinking about it. This changes everything. For months, perhaps even years, you have been carrying responsibilities, overcoming obstacles, and investing energy into goals that sometimes felt impossibly distant. There were moments when you questioned whether the effort mattered, moments when the finish line seemed to move farther away, no matter how hard you worked. Yet today, something remarkable happens. The recognition associated with the Sun-Saturn connection is not confined to the external world. It reaches inward. It settles into places that words cannot easily access. You do not merely understand that progress has occurred. You feel it. You do not simply acknowledge your growth, you embody it. There is a profound difference between hearing that you are ready and finally knowing it at the deepest level of your being. The validation arriving through this alignment is not limited to a promotion, an agreement, an opportunity, or a visible achievement. It penetrates beneath those things. It becomes a realization that the person you have become is capable of holding everything you have worked toward. Yet this is also where urgency enters the story, because the clarity available today comes with an expiration date. At the beginning of this message, I hinted that one factor would determine whether this alignment becomes a turning point or a missed opportunity. This is that factor. The window does not remain open for long. Today, June 2nd, the Sun and Saturn create one of the clearest energetic environments available this year. Decisions can be evaluated objectively. Commitments can be examined realistically. Structures can be strengthened. Boundaries can be established. Reality is visible without distortion. The facts are available. The path is understandable. The signal is strong. But only one day later, on June 3rd, Mercury forms a challenging square to Neptune. And Neptune changes everything. Neptune governs dreams, imagination, illusion, confusion, blurred perceptions, and emotional projection. Under healthy circumstances, Neptune can inspire creativity, spirituality, and vision. But when Mercury, the planet of thinking and communication, collides with Neptune through a tense square, clarity begins dissolving. Facts become harder to separate from feelings. Assumptions masquerade as truth. People start interpreting reality according to what they hope is true rather than what actually exists. Imagine standing on a mountain during a perfectly clear morning. Every road below is visible. Every landmark can be identified. Every destination makes sense. Then, Imagine a dense fog rolling across the landscape. The roads have not disappeared. The landmarks remain where they were. The destination still exists. The only thing that changed is your ability to see it. That is the difference between June 2nd and June 3rd. Today offers visibility. Tomorrow introduces uncertainty. This is why timing matters so much. If there is a conversation that needs to happen, a commitment that needs to be made, a boundary that needs to be established, or a decision that has already revealed itself internally, today carries extraordinary support. Waiting for endless certainty may actually create more confusion rather than less. The opportunity that appears obvious under today's Sun-Saturn influence could feel strangely complicated once Neptune's mist begins spreading through the mental atmosphere. The cosmic environment today resembles a notary office, with every document prepared, every signature line visible, and every condition verified. Everything is organized. Everything is accounted for. Everything is ready. Once the doors close, however, the process becomes significantly less straightforward. The paperwork still exists, but now you are trying to review it through a haze. And perhaps the most beautiful gift hidden within today's alignment is not external success at all. It is the transformation occurring inside your relationship with yourself. One of the deepest wounds many people carry is the fear that they are not truly qualified for the life they desire. Even after achieving meaningful milestones, they secretly wonder whether they deserve them. They question their competence. They downplay their accomplishments. They wait for someone to expose them as inadequate. This is the psychological pattern commonly called impostor syndrome. Saturn has no patience for that illusion. Saturn deals exclusively in evidence. Under this alignment, you are invited to examine your own history honestly. Look at the hours invested. Look at the challenges survived. Look at the lessons learned through failure. Look at the persistence required to continue after disappointment. Look at the countless moments when nobody was watching, when nobody was encouraging you, when nobody was guaranteeing success, and yet you continued anyway. These are not fantasies. These are facts. The reason today's confidence feels different is because it is not manufactured. It is not created through motivational slogans or temporary emotional excitement. It emerges from something far more durable. It is built upon proof. It is rooted in experience. It is anchored in resilience that has already been tested repeatedly. As a result, the identity you carry after this alignment may look very different from the one you carried into it. Before today, there may have been a lingering question quietly following you through every achievement, a question asking whether you had truly earned your place, whether you were genuinely capable, whether your success was legitimate. By the time this energy finishes working through you, that question begins losing its power, not because someone else answered it, because your own life did. And as this realization settles deeper into your awareness, another fascinating layer of this cosmic story begins to emerge, one that reveals the surprising relationship between mastery discipline and a lesson hidden within the image of a great musician and a diffuse bomb. What I'm about to share may be the most overlooked part of this entire alignment, and yet it holds the key to understanding why this moment feels so different from countless other transits that pass through the sky every year. Most people stop their analysis at the aspect itself. They look at the Sun, they look at Saturn, they measure the angle between them, and they assume they have the complete picture. But astrology often hides its deepest messages beneath the surface, encoded within symbolic layers that reveal the psychological and spiritual narrative unfolding behind the event. One of those layers comes through the Sabian symbols, a collection of 360 symbolic images assigned to every degree of the zodiac. These images act like archetypal stories, offering a glimpse into the deeper meaning of a particular moment in time. Today, on June 2nd, 2026, the symbolism is extraordinary. The Sun stands at 12 degrees and 12 minutes of Gemini. Saturn stands at 12 degrees and 12 minutes of Aries. Both occupy the range associated with the 13th degree symbolism, and together they tell a story that feels remarkably personal to anyone who has spent the last several months navigating pressure, restraint, discipline, and growth. The image connected to the 13th degree of Gemini is that of a great musician seated at a piano. Pause for a moment and really picture that scene. Not a beginner stumbling through scales. Not someone casually experimenting with a hobby. This is an individual who has dedicated an enormous portion of their life to mastery. Every movement of their hands reflects years of repetition. Every note carries the weight of countless hours spent practicing while nobody was watching. The audience sees elegance. The audience hears beauty. What they do not see are the sacrifices hidden beneath the performance. They do not see the frustration, the discipline, the mistakes, the corrections, the relentless refinement that transformed raw potential into exceptional ability. This is precisely what the Sun is illuminating today. The Sun, positioned within this symbolic degree, suggests that something you have been developing is ready to move beyond preparation and into expression. Your ideas, your communication, your expertise, your intellectual contributions are reaching a stage where they deserve visibility. For a long time, you may have felt as though you were still learning, still refining, still proving yourself. Yet today's energy suggests that the period of endless rehearsal is drawing to a close. There comes a moment in every journey when the student must step onto the stage. There comes a moment when preparation becomes performance. There comes a moment when the world is finally invited to witness what was built in private. But the story becomes even more fascinating when we look at Saturn. The 13th degree of Aries carries a dramatically different image. It is represented by an unexploded bomb that has been safely concealed. The symbolism is striking. Aries is naturally associated with action, force, urgency, instinct, and raw power. A bomb embodies concentrated energy, capable of enormous impact. Left unchecked, such force can create destruction. It can shatter relationships, derail opportunities, and generate consequences that echo for years. Yet in this symbol, the bomb remains inactive. The threat has been neutralized. The danger has been brought under control. What once represented volatility now represents mastery. This image perfectly reflects Saturn's highest expression while moving through Aries. Over the past several months, many people have been confronting situations that tested their patience. There were opportunities to react impulsively. There were moments when anger seemed justified. There were circumstances that invited reckless decisions, emotional outbursts, or ego-driven confrontations. Yet Saturn demanded something different. Saturn required restraint. Saturn required maturity. Saturn required the ability to contain enormous energy without allowing it to explode. Think about your own experience. How many times have you swallowed a reaction that would have created unnecessary chaos? How many times have you chosen long-term results over immediate emotional gratification? How many times have you resisted the temptation to prove yourself through force and instead allowed your actions to speak over time? These choices may have felt invisible. They may have felt unrewarded. They may have even felt unfair. Yet this symbol reveals that every act of restraint has been serving a larger purpose. When the great musician of Gemini meets the safely contained force of Aries through today's sextile, a powerful narrative emerges. The disciplined containment of raw energy creates the conditions necessary for mastery to flourish. The emotional explosions that never happened. The impulsive decisions you avoided. The conflicts you chose not to escalate. The energy you redirected toward growth rather than destruction. All of it becomes fuel for excellence. This is why today's alignment feels so significant. The power that could have been wasted has been preserved. The energy that could have created damage has been transformed. The pressure that could have shattered your progress has instead strengthened your foundation. And now, the same force that once threatened instability becomes the engine behind your performance. Today is not simply about recognition. It is about demonstrating what became possible because you learned how to manage your own power. So what does this actually mean in practical terms? What should someone do with an alignment like this? The answer is surprisingly straightforward. Make things official. Anything that has been existing in a grey area deserves clarity. Conversations that have remained verbal deserve documentation. Partnerships that have remained informal deserve structure. Commitments that have been implied deserve confirmation. Gemini governs communication. Saturn governs permanence. Together, they support the transition from discussion to reality. This is also a day to acknowledge your own progress honestly. Many people are far more aware of their shortcomings than their accomplishments. They remember mistakes vividly while minimizing victories. Today's energy encourages a different approach. Look back over the last 3 years. Examine what you have built. Record your achievements. Identify your growth. Recognize the evidence. This is not vanity. It is alignment. Your internal perception must eventually catch up with your external reality. Another powerful use of this energy involves seeking guidance from experience. Saturn is deeply connected to mentorship, wisdom, tradition, and accumulated knowledge. The Sun illuminates what Saturn contains. If there is someone whose expertise could save you years of trial and error, today creates an unusually supportive bridge between teacher and student. A single conversation could reveal insights that dramatically accelerate your path forward. Boundaries also deserve special attention. Many people establish boundaries emotionally, only to abandon them later. Today's sextile supports a different outcome. It supports boundaries built upon clarity and self-respect rather than temporary emotion. Whether the issue involves your time, your energy, your workload, or your personal relationships, today favors definitions that endure. And if you have been waiting for a moment to formally commit to something meaningful, whether it involves publishing, launching, signing, announcing, or stepping into a new level of responsibility, this alignment offers rare support. The structures created under this energy carry unusual durability because they are rooted in realism rather than fantasy. There is also another layer hidden beneath today's symbolism, one that many people never explore. Both the Sun and Saturn occupy the second decan of their respective signs. Decans reveal subtle distinctions within each sign, uncovering additional dimensions of power and purpose. The second decan of Gemini carries rulership through Mars in traditional astrology and Venus in modern astrology. The second decan of Aries is ruled by the Sun itself. Together, these overlapping influences create a fascinating energetic dialogue, a kind of hidden exchange of strength that adds even more weight to everything unfolding today. And understanding that hidden exchange reveals why this alignment may be operating on an even deeper level than most people realize. There is one final layer to this alignment that most people never notice. Yet it may explain why today's energy feels less like a fleeting opportunity and more like an official promotion from the universe itself. Hidden beneath the obvious mechanics of the Sun and Saturn sextile is a subtle exchange of authority that dramatically increases the significance of everything unfolding on June 2, 2026. Saturn currently occupies a portion of the zodiac connected to solar rulership, and at the same time receives a harmonious 60-degree aspect directly from the Sun. Astrologically, this creates a fascinating dynamic. The force of Saturn, the planet associated with institutions, systems, responsibility, hierarchy, and long-term achievement, is effectively responding to solar direction. The structures of reality are listening to the voice of individual purpose. The external world becomes more receptive to what your authentic identity has spent months, and perhaps years, attempting to establish. This is why today's alignment feels so different from merely receiving praise or recognition. It goes much deeper. Recognition can be temporary, validation can be subjective, but what is occurring here resembles official authorization. It resembles a moment when broader structures acknowledge what you have become. It is not about fighting the system. It is not about rebelling against authority. It is about reaching a level where authority itself recognizes your readiness. Many people spend years believing they must force their way into opportunities. They imagine success as a struggle against resistance. Yet there are rare moments when the struggle changes form. Instead of pushing against closed doors, the doors begin opening because the foundation has finally become undeniable. The credentials are there. The experience is there. The maturity is there. The proof exists. Today's alignment symbolizes that threshold. And the timing matters far more than most people realize, because the purpose of this transit extends beyond June 2nd itself. In many ways, today's events are preparing you for something that arrives shortly afterward. Exactly 1 week later, on June 9th, Venus forms a perfect conjunction with Jupiter in Cancer. Few astrological combinations carry the level of abundance, support, opportunity, and blessing associated with this meeting. Jupiter operates in Cancer from a position of exceptional strength, amplifying emotional fulfillment, security, family stability, financial growth, and personal well-being. Venus contributes harmony, attraction, relationships, beauty, resources, and prosperity. Together they create one of the most supportive alignments available. Yet there is an important truth hidden inside that blessing. Expansion without structure can become self-sabotage. Many people dream of receiving more without first creating the capacity to hold more. Wealth arrives but disappears just as quickly. Opportunities appear but remain underutilized. Relationships improve but lack the stability required to endure. Growth occurs, yet there is no container strong enough to support it. That is why today's Sun-Saturn sextile matters so much. The discipline you establish now becomes the vessel that holds the future blessings associated with Venus and Jupiter. The decisions made today determine whether next week's opportunities become lasting assets or temporary experiences. Think of Saturn as constructing the foundation before Jupiter expands the building. Think of Saturn creating the reservoir before abundance begins flowing into it. Without structure, growth becomes unstable. With structure, growth becomes sustainable. This is why the universe appears to be asking for responsibility before reward. You may have already sensed this process unfolding over the past several months. There has been a pressure surrounding many people's lives since Saturn entered Aries in February. For some, it has felt relentless. Every lesson seemed to require patience. Every breakthrough appeared delayed. Every advancement demanded additional effort. Situations that should have been simple became tests of endurance. Moments that called for immediate reaction instead required restraint. There were days when you may have wondered why progress seemed slower than expected. There were moments when it felt as if life kept asking for more proof, more discipline, more maturity, more consistency, more trust. Yet when viewed through today's alignment, those experiences begin to make sense. They were never punishments. They were preparation. Every challenge was strengthening something. Every delay was refining something. Every test was revealing whether your goals possessed enough substance to survive reality. And now the energy begins to shift. The pressure does not disappear overnight, but its purpose changes. Before today, you were being evaluated. After today, you are being positioned. Before today, your focus was proving your capability. After today, your focus becomes exercising that capability. The distinction may seem subtle, yet psychologically it changes everything. One energy asks whether you belong. The other assumes you already do. Many people will feel this shift internally before they see it externally. There may be a growing sense of certainty, a deeper trust in your own decisions, a reduction in second-guessing, a quiet realization that the constant need for approval is beginning to fade. This transformation becomes even more important when we consider the larger rhythm of June 2026. Something unusual is happening with momentum. Events that once felt distant are suddenly arriving. Conversations that seemed months away are taking place now. Decisions that felt impossible earlier in the year are becoming surprisingly obvious. Timelines appear compressed. Opportunities emerge rapidly. Developments unfold faster than expected. You may have already noticed this acceleration. Perhaps projects are moving unexpectedly. Perhaps relationships are evolving quickly. Perhaps circumstances that remained stagnant for months are suddenly shifting. This is not random. The entire month functions as a transition corridor between two very different chapters of energy. The intense individual restructuring that characterized the earlier part of the year is gradually giving way to a more expansive period focused on growth, creativity, emotional fulfillment, and tangible reward. And today's Sun-Saturn sextile serves as the hinge point connecting those realities. It is the pivot around which everything begins turning. That is why the acceleration may feel strange at first. Human beings often confuse momentum with chaos because both involve movement. But they are not the same thing. Chaos lacks direction. Momentum possesses direction. Chaos scatters energy. Momentum concentrates it. Chaos creates confusion. Momentum creates progress. The sensation of life speeding up does not necessarily mean something is wrong. It may simply mean that long-delayed developments are finally beginning to move. Which brings us back to the single most important lesson of today's alignment: action is required. At the beginning of this journey, we discussed the fact that a sextile is not automatic. Unlike some astrological configurations that operate regardless of participation, a sextile presents opportunity while expecting engagement. The opening exists, but you must choose to walk through it. And because Mercury's square to Neptune arrives on June 3rd, clarity has a limited lifespan. This is not a call for recklessness. It is not an invitation to force outcomes. It is a reminder not to abandon yourself through hesitation. If there is something you have genuinely prepared for, something supported by effort, discipline, evidence, and earned confidence, today is not the day to retreat from it. Trust the work. Trust the preparation. Trust the foundation. Trust the version of yourself that survived every lesson leading to this moment. Saturn does not casually place opportunities in front of people who are unprepared to manage them. If a door is opening, it is because the qualifications already exist. If the invitation appears, it is because the necessary growth has already occurred. Fear will always suggest waiting. Fear will always argue for more time. Fear will always invent reasons to postpone action. But by the time uncertainty arrives tomorrow, the extraordinary clarity available today may no longer be accessible in the same way. That is why this alignment matters. At exactly 7 o'clock in the evening on June 2nd, 2026, the Sun and Saturn perfect their 60-degree connection. The geometry is exact. The symbolism is powerful. The message is unmistakable. Ideas become structures. Effort becomes recognition. Discipline becomes authority. Invisible labor becomes visible achievement. Saturn is not distributing luck. Saturn is confirming merit. It is acknowledging the maturity developed through challenge, the strength built through patience, and the resilience forged through sustained effort. Today is not creating your success. Today is making it official. The foundation is set. The verdict is being delivered. The question is no longer whether you are ready. The question is whether you are willing to step forward and claim what you have already earned. And if you are, this may be the day you look back on later and recognize as the moment everything truly began to change.